I'm going to tie a very small little nymph on a size 20 grip 12004 standard Mayfly nymph hook with a 1.5mm brass bead. I often tie it with a tungsten bead as well, but I prefer to tie with brass because I like to fish it just below the surface, and I fish it in a still water for yellowfish here in South Africa. Crystal clear water where the fish feeds very close to the surface, and they often come up to dry. We fish them with dry flies more than what we fish them with wets. A lot of people say it's a dry fly fishery. It's not a dry fly fishery, it's a sight fishing fishery. And often they would come up to the dry and just look at the dry and then turn away. And that is when I get those rejections on a regular basis. I would change to this little fly and fish it just below the surface, like in 2-3 inches, not even that far below the surface. You cover the hook shank, then wrap, select about 4 or 5 fibers from a Coq de Leon feather. I like to use the stiffer material in the tail. It helps to balance the fly a little bit. It can be about 1.5 times the length of the fly. It's a very sparse tail. Tie that in, wrap it to the front. I tie this fly in like a pale, like a light kale color almost, and in black or charcoal color. And I came about it when I was invited to a friend of mine. I actually travel to him every year in Atlanta. He's got a piece of property just north of close to Blue Ridge in the northern parts of Georgia, and we fish those little streams, those mountain streams, for small trout, but often fish the bigger rivers as well in Tennessee. And when I asked him what flies I need to bring the first time I went, he sent me the hatch calendar, and most of it was small flies except for the March browns and the some green drakes and those sort of things. Most of the flies were very small flies on the wet side, and that's how I came about this little pattern. Very simple to tie. I use a strung saddle hackle stem for the abdomen, and I started tying these. When I came back, I obviously had them in my box, and I fished Sterkfontein for yellowfish. I had those rejections, and I decided to try one of these little guys to see if the fish would take them, and that it worked very well. You make the wraps very tight, close to each other, and remember to keep that gap between the bead and where you tie the tip of the stem that you tied in, because we need to tie some dubbing in there and tie it off, so you need to have a bit of space there. And these flies worked very well for those fish who rejected the dry flies. You can see it forms a very nice rib, just very small abdomen like that. You tie that off. And I fish it on a like a 12-foot leader. You can still see the fish taking the fly, and a lot of people say it's a dry fly fishery. It's not a dry fly fishery, it's a sight fishing fishery. And you still sight fish to the fish with this fly. Quite often you can't see the fly below the surface, depending on sunlight and all that kind of stuff. But you can still see the fish when it follows the fly and its reaction when it takes the fly. So you watch the fish's reaction rather than the fly. Now, once you've done that, you tie it off and you cut the stem off. And then I use a very fine camel dubbing. I like to use a black camel dubbing. if I'm gonna fish dirtier or deeper water, then I would sometimes tie in like a super fine UV dubbing or something like that. All you do is and this is also a grip product, and I'll list all the materials with links below the video. Just standard dubbing technique. Twist it onto the thread, slide it up. Not sure if this is going to be enough, but let's see. I'm using 8/0 grip thread. You just wrap that, fine wraps. This is more than enough. Behind the hook to build up that wing or that thorax. Just like that. Push that bead, it's nice and tight. Get the thread in behind the bead, work that in there, and then tie it off. I personally prefer flies that are very simple to tie. I don't like complicated flies, although I do tie some complicated stuff from time to time. But I prefer, when it's trout and yellowfish flies, I prefer the more simple kind of stuff. There we go. And cut that off, and that's it. Very easy to fill a fly box in a very short period of time. And you can tie that in various colors. I tie it in a like a pale, almost like a light kale color, and in an olive, and then either charcoal or black. When I tie it in an olive and the light kale color, I prefer to tie it with a gold bead rather than a black bead. Check out the ingredients or the materials that I use below. I'll put links in there to my website, and please like the YouTube page. There's a lot more of these things coming.